Let me ask you this, David.
Yeah.
If there was a cricket on your hot dog,
Yes.
you just say the hell with it and eat the whole thing, right? Both in,
Sure.
right.
Sure.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. I don't mind eating a hot dog. I'm open-minded.
Here to talk about food. Everybody here, like myself, I think all of you have been eating most of your lives. One laugh. I got one laugh. Like myself, I think most of us have been eating all our lives. Ah, very crazy.
I'm here today to talk about restaurant trends. I've been at the Improper Bostonian for about 3 years, and in that time I've been writing a column called First Taste that basically previews a restaurant before it opens. So, at the office I've got an Excel spreadsheet with, hundreds of entries of restaurants that are upcoming, restaurants that have opened, stuff we've covered, etc. So I'm always checking that and seeing what's upcoming and trying to keep tabs on what's to come. And I think I checked today, and I've got probably about 50 restaurants already, that have already been announced and are set to come in the coming year. So it's a pretty interesting time in the city for dining trends. And I would say that, I saw a study last year saying now people are spending more on going out to eat than they are on groceries, thanks to supposedly the millennials. So obviously it's a great industry to be in if you can succeed. But the problem is succeeding. And so those people who are going out, if they're going out, three times a week to have a meal out, they can't eat at Oya and Mentone every night. And hence the sort of rapid disappearance of the white tablecloth dining. And I think right now what we're seeing, if I had to sum it up in sort of one word, or 3 words, I suppose, would be global comfort food. The big buzzword was comfort food, and everyone was serving mac and cheese and all that sort of fun stuff around the recession and coming out of it. But right now you need to sort of stand out a little bit if you're opening a restaurant. And so, everybody's got a burger. Everybody has a gastropub opening. It's very hard to make it as a business. And so we're seeing a lot of people looking to foreign influences. A lot of restaurants have opened up in the past year or so that are serving Italian street food. Goes by the name of Sfisi. So there's a few of those. One just opened up last week, I think, called SRV in the South End, which is, it's mostly small food that you would, small bits of food that you would sort of buy if you were on the street from a vendor. And we're also seeing a lot of Asian food is a big trend. Obviously, you can name a handful of some of the top restaurants that have opened in the past year in Boston, and most of them are Asian. Hajoko in Fenway, Tiger Mama in Fenway, Banyan in the South End, and it's really not going to go anywhere. Akinto is opening in the South End. They just had a pop-up. So there's a lot of buzz and demand for Asian food and that sort of ilk. But we're also seeing Mexican food. There's a lot of Mexican places popping up. Again, sort of a comfort type food. Same with the pizza craze that happened in the past couple of years. Comfort food that people can go out and have sort of 3 meals out, different sort of food each night. So I would say that is probably the biggest trend. But again, as as everyone here is a consumer and everyone's out to eat a lot more goes into a restaurant than just the food. When it's summer, everybody heads for the seaport and water views, or people are lining up now for just to get spots to have al fresco seating. So there's sort of different demands that are sort of changing in the restaurant industry. And another trend I think that we're going to see popping up this year, and I sort of see it, I live in South Boston. Some of the most reliable restaurants are from the Lincoln Group. They have 2 restaurants, Lincoln Tavern and Loco, both within a block. They're opening up a 3rd restaurant on the same block this coming year that is Italian. And when you really look at it, a lot of the restaurant groups are focusing in on one particular neighborhood. If a group has hit it big in the South End, for example, like the Gallows Group or the Aquitaine Group, they're not necessarily going to take the risk to move out of that neighborhood and go to another neighborhood. So they're sort of expanding there. That's happening in JP as well. The guys behind Tres Gatos, who have done Center Street Cafe, are opening another Mexican place in the coming months called Casa Verde. That should be opening probably middle of next month. So really it's about a lower risk that the restaurateur takes, because the audience knows the chef or the owner, or is familiar with the staff. A lot of these places, when I talk to the owner or the general manager, they say, well, we're expanding not just to expand, but because we have a lot of great people who work for us. We have a great sous chef, or we have a couple of great servers, and we want to give them other opportunities to grow. And so we can't do that within our current structure. So we need to open another restaurant and give them a chance to, a great server a chance to become a great, general manager, or a great sous chef chance to become a great executive chef. So that's, I'd say, to sum up those trends, that's there. So we're just sort of wrapping up. But if you see me in the audience or have any questions on, restaurants I like or best meals I've had recently, feel free to ask. All right, thanks.
All right, don't go anywhere. Stay up here. You talked about all these great restaurants opening, and it's very interesting that they're opening. A restaurant owner will open a restaurant on the same street or the same block, a second restaurant, a third, which is what Tiffany did with Sweet Cheeks and Tiger Mama. Now she can leave one kitchen and walk 2 doors down to the next kitchen.
Exactly.
Why are they not afraid that they're going to infringe on their own business?
Well, I think that they're opening different concepts. So,
where Sweet Cheeks is barbecue, Tiger Mama's is
Southeast Asian. Yeah. Exactly. So when you have different concepts, you know that the service is going to be probably the same standard that is held up there, and it also helps just logistically, even beyond for the chef.
Right.
Other logistics.
And you also mentioned the different cuisines that are popping up. There's Mexican, but Greek cuisine seems to be coming into its own right now.
Yes, I'm sorry, I meant to mention that.
That's quite all right.
That's sort of a, anyone who's seen the stereotypical Greek person, it's all about comfort, right? I mean, it's do you have everything you need?
Right.
But
and Jody Adams is opening up a Greek restaurant.
Jody Adams.
Brendan Pelly, who
Brendan
just
Pelly,
residence over at Wink and Nod, is doing. He's
Michael Schlau.
Michael Schlau has
opened Dorettas, and a committee down on Fan Pair, which is buzzing with.
And they're packing a minute committee.
Yeah, they are.
That's true. Let's talk just a quick minute about not as much restaurants opening, but we've lost a few really good restaurants this year. We lost, beginning with Hammersley's. Who's been to Hammersley's? What a tremendous restaurant. I mean, you know, you can't say enough about Gordon's chicken, roast chicken. You just can't, because it was the best chicken in town. But that shut down. And then Clio shut down. And now we're hearing that, you know, everybody's favorite comfort food, the East Coast Grill, is shutting down.
Yep. And also should mention, sort of in the same breath, although they were a newcomer, Westbridge in Kendall Square is shutting. And, you know, that to me is one of the more shocking, because they've only been open for a few years, and, you know, they were on everybody's list of top new restaurants.
What's your take on that?
Westbridge, you know, I just got to think the rents got too high in Kendall for them. As far as Clio,
it's like New York syndrome.
yeah, exactly. And, you know, I think that's a big thing as far as, you know, a lot of people say they can't find great meals down in the Seaport. You know, it's hard to pay the rent down there. And so
it's hard to find a place to park, too.
Yeah, well, that's true. But, yeah,
Nobody goes there. It's too crowded, right?
Just quickly wanted to talk about the Food Loft, first of all. How many of you in here would consider yourselves professionals working in food, a food business, some kind of food-related entity? Okay, cool, excellent. How many of you would consider yourselves startups or working for a startup or an entrepreneur in the food space? Okay, cool. I know there are many others of you out there that are probably food lovers too, but we'll stop it there. The Food Loft is, as Henry said, a co-working space for food and food tech entrepreneurs. I've been working in the food media space now for 10 years with the Harvard Common Press. And really early on in my time there, worked very closely with Bruce to begin making investments in food tech startups. This was in 2010. This was really before food tech was a thing. And what food tech really is the marriage of digital platforms and technologies with food to solve some of the problems that are facing the food ecosystem. Give you an example. There's a company that we invested in early on called Yumly that is an intelligent recipe search engine that will learn your taste preferences the more you use it. And so as you use Yumly, it figures out that you have a peanut allergy, and so it will not show you recipes that have peanuts in it. It will figure out that you love spicy food, and so it will show you spicier foods that it might show me. And so we made this investment, and it really opened the floodgates for us. And so over the past 5 years, we have been fostering relationships with food entrepreneurs, making investments, and we founded the Food Loft in 2013 to really solidify a place for the Boston food community to have a home and have a place to really come and get access to mentorship and events and to meet other entrepreneurs and professionals working in food. If we don't connect tonight and you'd like to learn more, you can shoot me an email at adam@thefoodloft.com. I'd love to meet and talk with you guys about it some more. What I want to talk about today related to the future of food is really looking at food from 3 angles. The consumer angle, the angle of the entrepreneur, and the angle of brands. And obviously I'm going to be brief with each because we have a limited amount of time. But I want to look at dinner for consumers and really think about the ways in which dinner is changing. If you think about a decade ago, the way that we got food on the table at night, there were a limited number of options. You might go to the grocery store after you found a recipe and do your own shopping. You might order from a restaurant and either take out or order in or take out. Or you might eat at a restaurant. And today, that landscape is shifting so dramatically. How many of you are familiar with meal kits like Blue Apron and Plated? Not surprising. Meal kits, you get all the ingredients you need to your door for a week's worth of meals with the recipes. This is game-changing when it comes to thinking about how we put dinner on the table. This is only one example of dozens of different companies that are really trying to solve this problem. You have Sprig and Munchery out there that will deliver to you both ready-to-eat and heat-and-eat meals in less than an hour for usually $10 or less in terms of what the meals cost. So dinner is changing, the dinner plate is changing, but what I would like you all to think about is what that means for us as consumers. We're at a time in the food space where food transparency and issues around traceability are really coming to the forefront, and people are starting to think about where does my food come from, and how is it being sourced, and what am I putting in my body? And I would say that the challenge of some of these new ways that we get dinner is that it creates an opacity around where our food comes from. If you've ever gotten a Blue Apron and you look at the bag of arugula, it's arugula by Blue Apron. It isn't Fresh Express, it isn't Dole. You don't really know where it comes from. And ostensibly it comes from farmers and local farmers, but I would say that the future of food is going to be about really being aware of not only where your food comes from, but who's making your food choices for you. Blue Apron and Plated and the like are making huge choices about what we eat, and if we don't question that and really think about that, there's a chance that we really miss out on this opportunity to be advocates for what we want out of the food system and where we want the food system to go. And I think that technology just enables so much more influence and an opportunity to really take advantage of food safety and really understanding food and knowing what we want out of our food, that we shouldn't lose that. So that's kind of the consumer piece and thinking about really food choice and how we make food choices. From the entrepreneur perspective, for those of you thinking about startups, it's particularly interesting. I've met with about 500 or so food startups over the past 5 years, and it's just a huge and growing community. And I would argue that 2 or 3 years ago, when the space was less crowded, you could be an entrepreneur in food and really know very little about food. You could have a technical ability and say, I'm going to build an app that does X, Y, and Z. And that is really changing. I think now, more so than ever, as we think about technical expertise related to food entrepreneurship, food is a core skill that you have to have on your team if you're going to build a business in this space. The entrepreneurship space is changing so much, it's becoming so competitive that as you think about starting your own food companies, really having a deep understanding of how food works, whether it's distribution or back-of-house restaurant management or whatever it happens to be, that's a core skill you need to have on your team. I was staggered to find out recently that $5.7 billion was invested in food startups last year. I mean, that is a huge amount of money. It's the most ever in terms of tracking funding for food startups. And so this is a space that we're going to continue to see activity in. And I don't want us to think that technology will save and solve all the problems that happen with food. We need to really have a critical understanding of the food space. Finally, thinking about brands, as we all know, I think that local producers and artisans are really starting to take market share back from some of these larger brands that have owned massive parts of the food ecosystem. I think the craft beer space is a really great analogy for the food space at large when you think about how these companies are starting to grab market share. But one of the things I want to kind of think about over the next few years is how brands, while they are losing potentially market share and losing influence, they're starting to own more innovation. You look at companies like Target. Target is piloting a program with IDEO where they explore the future of food packaging, which is an amazing opportunity, and it really, I think, will yield some very interesting results. But Target is planting a flag to say, we want to own a piece of this market. And more, I think we need to be very aware of where innovation is coming from and who is involved. This is not a good guys versus bad guys thing. I think in my heart of hearts, I believe there are many brands out there that we might think of as bad that can have really positive impact and influence on what happens with food. And I think what we're going to find is that in the future, brands use their clout to influence innovation, and through that influence what you buy, how you buy it, where you buy it, and when. And I think that there's this sense that we want to be very aware, again, of the choices we make and what we're buying and why. So with that, I'm glad you all could be here tonight. If you have any questions, please come up and see me after. Again, it's adam@thefoodloft.com, and I'd love to talk with you all.
Very interesting. The one question I have about food kits, and I've tried them, don't you think they take the creativity out of cooking?
It's a little bit like being told what to cook.
Yeah. It is. I mean, everything is perfectly measured out.
Yep.
You get the right amount of sesame oil. You get the right amount of spices. You get the right amount of arugula.
Yep.
And there's a step-by-step instruction. It's a recipe that you're following. But there's really, everything comes out of the box.
In a very kind of technology-oriented way, it associates inputs with this output. So you put all these inputs in, and out will come this. And I think you're right. Blue Apron really started as a way to teach people how to cook, but I think what they've done is really removed a lot of the intuition that comes with cooking and made it this kind of analog process about, I start here and then I get to the end.
Right, yeah. I mean, is it convenient? Yes, it's convenient.
Super convenient.
But I love to be creative. I have 5,000 cookbooks. That's not an exaggeration. I have 5,000 cookbooks, and they're not allowed in the kitchen. That's the hook. If I want to cook a recipe or if I want to find something, I'll go to the particular book that I'm looking for, and I'll pull the recipe out. I'll read it in the living room, and that's where the book will stay. The rest is up to me. But a lot of it, I think, is feeling comfortable in the kitchen.
Yes, exactly. I think there's a huge, there's a lot to be said for what all this means for food education and food literacy in some ways. When we think about, this box arrives and I'm just going to pull everything out and kind of make it because
I can't see myself doing that.
Right.
Not once a week, not 5 times a week. But I know people do.
Yes, I do. I mean, I'm an avid user of Blue Apron, and I publish cookbooks. So I mean, it's a very weird thing.
And I have a number of your cookbooks. I have a lot of Harvard Common Press cookbooks in my collection.
So, many folks over the years have said, so how did you get into eating bugs? And so I would tell them, and it took a long time before I realized that what they were really saying is, how did you come to leave behind all that is good and normal and clean? And so that's a fine question. So I came to bugs because the short story is an old college buddy of mine said, "Oh, look, you're being an insufferable foodie. Here's a food source that's something new for you because you love talking about new foods." So he gave me these boxed up mealworm and cricket snacks. So I tried them because why wouldn't I? They're just a food source like anything else. So they weren't very good, but it made me curious to learn more. The more interesting answer is that it spoke to threads that ran through my entire life. And it's never been about flavor and taste. Of the 60 to 70 species of bugs that I've had, they occupy a bell curve in some, nice poker face there. I like that. I saw that. Sorry, I couldn't help it. Anyway, so some of them were really pretty amazing, and they're just like duck and sushi and cheesecake. They're just as good as those things, believe it or don't. And then others are like wretchedly horrible, and I never ever want to eat that again. And then some are in the middle. But the real answer is, why would I pour this amount of energy in over the past 17, 18 years? And have a manuscript about it and be archiving all kinds of stuff and having all kinds of adventures and experiences that are amazing. Why would I do this? Because I came to realize that it really is a spiritual quest for me. This is the kind of thing that Abby said, you guys might want to just dig deep and say something you wouldn't normally say and be edgy and be interesting. So yes, how we eat, as well as other aspects of our lives, how we eat is a compact, it's a contract with the world around us. Given the fact that even now in 2016, food comes from nature. My students at CCRI and many other places, they think food is stuff that comes out of a supermarket. It comes from the trucks that deliver to the supermarket, and that's all you need to know. And the longer the list of ingredients, the more good stuff must be in there. It's obvious. So, suffice it to say that the young, especially, and people in general, don't have much of a clue about what food is and where it comes from, the difference between healthy and nutritious, and don't know much about what the future is holding. Because the scientists, the climate scientists, are saying this is where the happy hour turns maybe a tiny bit less happy, right? Because to talk about entomophagy in an honest way is to acknowledge the idea that this new solution to problems that we've created is not really a solution that most people want. I mean, I haven't had a chance to interview each of you individually, and yet I'll go out way out on a limb and figure that many of you are either grossed out by the idea of just thinking about it now. Oh, not you. All right, fine, but some of you, not you, but some of them. All right, so either you're grossed out by the very concept, or even if you don't have a problem with the concept because the concept is far away, because I didn't bring any bugs, I'm sorry. All right, so all right, some of you just heard, all right, that's fine, don't worry about it, right? So, but if I were to present you with some dry roasted crickets, or even weirder, you go, oh yeah, that's great, I want to see someone else eat it, right? So, anyway, ecology really means the study of home. That's what the word means. So if we acknowledge that we are animals, we are mammals, and we acknowledge that we are in this, this whole big ball of earth with other species, and we start paying attention to what the people are saying, the scientists, most of the scientists are saying, except for those few percent that are funded by corporations, most of the scientists are pretty clear about where we're headed, and it's nowhere particularly pretty. Are there solutions? Yes. The problem is that those solutions run into problems because we don't want those solutions. The solution we want is more of what we've always had. We love business as usual. And this week, that's still working. And next week, I'm sure it'll probably work too. But I'm an English teacher, right? And so one of the things that I love chasing after more than anything else is meaning. If you read a novel and you love the novel, it's because it means something, you identify with the characters, you get the idea, right? So if we, as a species, were a character in a story, how would that character be likely to end up, given that character's habits? Oof, it's not even fun to think about, but it's coming. So my idea is that if we have negative ideas about insects in general, and if we have very negative ideas about insects as food and putting insects into our body, well, we also have the opportunity to examine the reasons behind those ideas and those attitudes. We have the opportunity to choose a different perspective. Lots of people will tell me, look, I really want to get over this, but I have a phobia, or I've always had a thing about these, or they're creepy crawly, or when I was a kid, there was this spider. You know, it's always something. And lots of people say, well, you know, insects spread diseases. They're disease. They live in the dirt, you know, that kind of thing. Which is a lot like saying that dogs bite people. Because every now and then there's a dog that bites someone, but by and large, most dogs, no biting. There are some insects that vector diseases, et cetera, et cetera. Most insects, not harmful to humans, that kind of thing. So my deep devotion to this subject has yielded me not much in the way of financial success or career stability. Ha! Yeah, I know, shocker, right? Huh? So, right, but it's given me so many other things. I mean, yeah, sure, I was interviewed on the Colbert Report, okay, and I've given a talk at an international FAO conference. But I've also opened up the stomach of a wild-caught roasted frog in northern Thailand, and other than eating the frog, I opened up the stomach, took out the grasshopper that the frog ate, and then I ate the grasshopper. And you know, that's pretty special. I know that those are all sounds of jealousy. I know that when I hear them. I recognize those sounds. Like, oh man, where can I get that? So, right, so moving on. I have this stack of books because I am an English teacher, right? I have no choice. So we're going to move on to this. So here we have 3 books that represent or 4 books, excuse me. I should learn to count. That represent our past, our future, and then an overarching view. So Guns, Germs, and Steel. You guys probably know these books, but Guns, Germs, and Steel talks about why the fates of humans have unfolded differently. Well, because, you know, in Eurasia, in this nice east-west axis, they had lots of access to the plants and animals that were very tasty, and they could produce them. And therefore, it's insects that are eaten more in the tropics. So that's interesting, that whole geography thing, that whole human history thing. Right. And then we have Ishmael, which is an incredible book, looking at human history as a mythology. The whole idea that how do you create a society, a civilization that can fly as opposed to just free falls and flies for a while until it hits the ground. And one of those things is to pay attention to nature as opposed to, well, let's say hedonism. Hedonism is great. We all love pleasure, but a life devoted to pleasure or a species that devotes itself to pleasure, it'll have fun for a while. And then, Make Room, better known as the movie version, Soylent Green. The book version has no cannibalism at all in it. That was a creation for the movies. But what it does have is people at each other's throats over food, and people weep openly at the sight of a steak. So we have food extinction issues now. We have foods that are slowly winking out because the battle with the pathogens, the breeding, the downbreeding for yield means the genetics of the foods are simpler. That makes them more fragile. And then there's the whole pandemic question of zoonotic diseases, which insects don't yield us to. So, you know, if you're going to try a bug, you can make it an adventure. That's completely sensible, completely logical. But it's all about the adventure of thinking anew. And since history is pushing us in this direction, probably pretty quickly, going into the future of food and the future of recalibrating our expectations and recalibrating what is normal, what is good, it's going to be time for that. And it doesn't have to be some kind of existential defeat. Thank you.
Grab that. Very, very interesting. That was like a mini TED Talk, wasn't it? Let me ask you this, David.
Yeah.
If there was a cricket on your hot dog,
Yes?
you just say the hell with it and eat the whole thing, right? Both in...
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. I don't mind eating a hot dog. I'm open-minded.
But one thing you didn't touch on is that bugs are a source of protein for so many people in the world who don't have access to a steak or a piece of chicken.
Well, first of all, bugs are a source of protein and vitamins and minerals.
Correct.
And amino acids.
Right.
So it's not just high in protein.
Right.
And second of all, there are many, many recorded cases of local populations paying more for bugs than they do for the foods that we enjoy.
Well, there's a Mexican restaurant in Cambridge where you can get a plate of crickets.
Grasshoppers?
We can all go over there tonight and get...
They're called
everybody can get a plate of crickets.
Chapulines, they're grasshoppers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who here, a show of hands, who has eaten bugs? Anybody eaten a bug? Yeah. Well,
You should all have your hands up because
Yeah.
there are bug parts in all
A
of
fly.
your food. So let's be fair, people. You've all eaten bugs. You just won't admit it.
If you would like to explore the bug-eating process more, there's a book that came out a while ago. David and I were talking about it upstairs. It's called Man-Eating Bugs by Peter Menzel, and I had him on my radio show when the book came out, and he brought with him a worm,
Caterpillar?
Mopani
Worm.
Mopani worm.
It's a caterpillar.
Which was as thick and round as my finger, but only about maybe 2 inches longer. And what they do in the African desert is they squeeze the guts out of the worm, throw it on a plastic tarp, where it dries into this musty, horrible tasting thing, and that's what they eat once it's dried out.
Let's keep in mind, I should add, that whole squeezing the guts out thing
Yeah.
must sound very gross to anyone who's never been in a slaughterhouse.
It has to.
Yeah.
But when I ate it, Peter Menzel said to me, you just had the equivalent in protein to 2 huge steaks. And I have to tell you this, it was the worst tasting thing I've ever eaten. I tasted it for 4 days. I couldn't get the taste out of my mouth. 4 days I tasted that damn worm. When I could have gone to Grill 23 and got 2 big steaks and been happy just the same. What's the craziest thing? I mean, I guess the frog story is the craziest because you had to cut open the frog to get to the caterpillar.
Don't sell me short.
Yeah.
I've had 18 species of mammals, too.
Yeah. No, I get it. Let me ask you, what was the connect the dots here from the? How would you interpret the 3 talks that you guys gave, and what's the connecting link of all of this, other than just the subject matter of the future of food? Anybody want to start? David will start.
So we first had, this is what people want to eat, and this is the law of the jungle in terms of restaurants.
Right.
Then we have, as we diversify with our technology, we have so many ways of feeding ourselves, and we can fine-tune any, right? And then we have, the future? Oh, boy, guys, I got news for you. Rethinking.
All right. I'll go along with that. What was your takeaway, Adam, from the 3 talks?
Oh, I mean, I think that really more than anything else, like food, we talk about food choice and
Right.
diversity, and whether you're looking at up-and-coming restaurants and food trends or looking at bugs and insects as food, there is no reality in which you can't really have what you want in food and really kind of think about how you can really create your own food reality in some sense. I mean, it's a great time to be a consumer in food, especially in this group. I mean, people who are informed and inspired and really interested in and can make decisions about where they eat out or how they eat in or what kinds of food they put in their bodies. So it's an exciting time to be in food and working in food.
Matt?
I would say it's probably know your food. Whether it's a bug. And I think the more people eat bugs, it sounds like, the more they become more comfortable with it. And know where your food's coming from. And that's a trend that I'm sort of seeing. Obviously, everyone's doing, seasonal. I was just talking about this with someone in the audience. Seasonal. I'm seeing a little bit less local because you can't get exactly what you want year-round locally.
Do you think we'll ever see a bug kiosk at Boston Public Market?
That would be something. Yeah, we could. David would know better than me, but yeah, I'm sure there will be an appetite for that down the line.
I think, too, that, when it comes to the future of food, especially when restaurants are involved, we're all adventurous, we're all willing to try a chef's food, but if we don't like it, that particular item will be removed from a menu. And so in a lot of cases, we control the future of food. We let the chefs know what we like. We let them know what we don't like. Now, I started earlier talking about your least desirable food trend and your favorite food trend. Why don't we go down the line of this panel and tell you, as far as a food trend, now here's a guy who knows restaurants inside and out. What would you say your least favorite food trend has been?
I would say it's probably the food trend or the dining trend that I'd most like to see reversed is I would like to see more women chefs throughout all of Boston. I mean, all of us, the four of us are all guys up here talking about the future of food. But,
He's just playing to the ladies. Come on. I wasn't born yesterday.
No, but, you're seeing legends like, Lydia Shire and Jody Adams.
Joanne Chang.
Yeah, Joanne Chang. And obviously Tiffany Faison just opened up her second restaurant. Asia May in South Boston has a little spot going there. But the actual sort of, I don't know what the actual percentage is, ratio, but most of the people who I talk to when I talk to chefs are men.
Are we talking specifically dining and eating or just food in general?
No, just in general. Like a food trend that you have seen, either that you're really hot on or something that you would love to see go away?
Yeah, certainly. One I'm particularly excited about is I think sustainable business ideas are finally finding sustainable business practices, which I think is really important. So if you look even like a year ago, the idea of like food waste, we all know it's a huge issue, but there weren't really a lot of entrepreneurs being very visible about tackling it. And in the past like 6 to 8 months, you've had companies here, companies in San Francisco, companies in the Southwest really tackling food waste through connecting the net producers with the net users. And I think that's just a huge opportunity for the future. So I'm really glad to see some people tackling it.
David?
Well, although I'm not at all qualified to talk about specific trends in terms of societal patterns, I will say that not simply obesity in this country, but the connection between obesity and food illiteracy, which, I don't know enough about whether that's more a regional thing or a class-related thing, but it's tragic. Food ignorance and the connection of food and our bodies, it boggles the mind.
Well, very, very well put. David, you're the Providence guy. If we were going to go as a group down to Providence, where would you take us?
If you were paying, I'd say maybe Hemingway's. I like. I don't go out to eat that often. I like to find out-of-the-way places. I kind of like Red Fez. It's nothing special. It's nice. Hemingway's. I would probably say, look, if we're gonna really do it, go down to like the Matunic Oyster Bar down by the shore. That's kind of nice.
I could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What if you had to recommend one cookbook? What would it be
Oh my
for the
goodness.
group?
Well, it definitely depends on personal preference. My personal favorite right now is the Cook's Illustrated DIY cookbook. It's not new, but it has these amazing recipes for home-cured salmon, bacon jam. I've made my own paneer cheese on a few occasions. It's just, if you like doing stuff at home and working with your hands and not necessarily cooking a recipe, can't recommend it highly enough.
How many feel comfortable in the kitchen? Honestly feel comfortable in the kitchen. If we come over, you have no problem putting together a meal. Good. Good. You know, Julia Child said, never apologize for your food. If it falls on the floor, pick it up and put it on the plate. And if it has bugs on it, give it to David. Matt, what is your, what restaurant are you most anticipating right now?
I would say probably, and I didn't get to talk about this, but Little Donkey, Ken Oringer and Jamie Bissonnette, the guys behind Toro, and obviously Ken just closed Clio, so he's got a little bit more time on his hands, although he's a very busy guy. But
he's got a couple of kids to push around in a stroller too.
But I would say, you know, there's a lot, but that one probably sort of stands as, could be a real big one.
Will you try and squeeze in a last meal at the East Coast Grill?
I'm not sure I'll be able to get out there in time, but yeah, I mean, there's so many spots that people have such a sentimental attachment to that are closing, and it's unfortunate, but
Is it high rents or is it just
it's
run
high
its
rents.
course?
It's, you know, some stuff has run its course. You know, Cleo's across the street from Duave, and if people are going to a fancy dinner,
I ate at Duave last week, and I think that Chris Coombs is definitely on track for a James Beard nomination, if not a local winner this year.
yeah, he's doing some great stuff, and so that's part of it. It's also staffing's tough as well. There's so many spots that have opened up in the area. Especially you look at, you know, Fanpare, Seaport, they didn't have any restaurants, you know, 10, 15 years ago, so.
And you know, one of the things that this guy, Chris Coombs, who's the chef at Duave, and he also has D-Bar in Dorchester and Boston Chops down on the South End, one of the things he's doing, and you just touched on something very interesting about restaurants are having a very difficult time staffing. It's hard to believe, but it's true. And one of the things that Chris is doing, and he's the only one in the country to my knowledge who's doing it, is that if you are enrolled or a recent grad of a culinary school program, as long as you work for him, he'll pay your college bill. He'll pay that tuition for you. There's nobody else in the country doing that. But that's a guy who really wants to give back, train the people that way that he was trained, learn the way that he learned, and it's just, I mean, it speaks volumes to someone like that. And to get in an environment of a 4-star French restaurant and learn and have your college bill paid for as long as you work for him, that's pretty damn special.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap it up. I want to thank you so much for coming out. I've got another day with Jim and Marjorie tomorrow, so I got to hit the hay pretty early, but thank you so much. A warm round of applause for our guests. Thank you for coming out.
The stuff that they're making in this factory, I realized, was the same stuff that they're shipping to this country that's ending up shipping to our country, ending up in our landfills, or in their case, their rivers. And it's just coming from crap that we buy that we don't actually end up needing.